I'm having a little difficulty there. There we go. Now we got it. There we go. Hi, everyone. Let's hopefully do that again. So if you didn't join me before, I am Ryan Reed. I am the host of the Pixel Classroom podcast, and I am here for the last episode here for 2023 here before we kick off 2024. That's right. This is recorded on Saturday, the 30th of December, and we're getting ready right now to get everything ready. And believe it or not, I'm kicking off a weekly episode here. For those who didn't know here, and I'm going to nicely have titled this, of course, the Building the Thinking Classrooms model here. So this is based off Dr. Peter Liljedahl's book, Building the Thinking Classrooms in Mathematics, 14 Teacher Practices for enhancing your learner. And we're going to go ahead and I'm going to show you that right here because, why not? Anywhoosies. So we're going to go ahead right there and go right there. And there it is. There it is. Here we go. Sorry about that. You got to love it when you're doing live stream here and things just go wrong and everything. So building the thinking classrooms model right here. In fact, actually, I'll switch that down so people can get a little everything. So this was created a couple years ago, but basically building thinking classrooms is areas for thing. So the author here, Peter, and he's been a long time partner, but basically, so what happened was thinking classrooms, and I'm taking this from my good friends, Che and Pav from the Che and Pav show, who have actually inspired me to start working on this. But basically the thinking classroom model has been coined by a mathematician, Dr. Peter Liljedahl, and his work for creating math learning spaces that encourage students to think more about their math tasks. The problems-based approach has several best practices which are tied to it, which are, of course, have been outlined. There's an Edutopia thing by Peter himself. And Che and Pav really kind of jumped me in talking about this. So they really talked about what were the parses, such as rich discussions and several aha moments throughout the areas and how this works. So this really kind of caught my attention a few months ago. Believe it or not, it wasn't Shane Pav who got me interested in this. I actually had seen the Edutopia piece on this, and it really had got my attention here on that. So basically, the 14 practices of building thinking, like I said, Peter is he's a math professor up there in Canada. He's been teaching a very long time. He's got several video and podcast episodes, but he basically goes over the main practices. You can see is like, what do you want your students? We give them something to think about, something that will require thinking and encourage, and they give them the thinking test. And they talk about collaborative groups. Big thing that's been a really thing about me the last couple of years is making groups work. So I've had success and I've had a lot of no success on this. I mean, it's been very interesting how that's happened. So henceforth, I've really been working into this area of a part here where they talk about using randomization and having whether groups or strategy, but also do random groups. Of course, have them think about the thing. Because one thing we seem to have a lot of part of, and this is really talked about too, is imagine optical students staying working on vertical non-permanent surfaces such as whiteboards, blackboards, and windows, as well as digital. There's actually a video out there of actually a student classroom that used digital whiteboard using Canva to make this up. But one thing is really working on those, because most of us is we talk about it, we do an interactive PowerPoint. Sadly, I've been as guilty as the next person, and it's basically talk, do an essential question, talk, move, maybe do a randomization. But really, I have the areas where the students are just talking, basically they're giving the answers or looking at the board. And it's barely it's not as engaging as it should be, but it's really talks about how it's, to use these things to do more risk taking, the fact to, do a vertical presentation with whiteboards. And I'll talk about that a little bit. Also, now this is a problem I have. They talk about, furniture. There are a lot of classrooms, and this works in the thinking classrooms, is it's not the same model. As they say, you're trying to get away from a front classroom, where it's in the board, there's the agenda, there's the projector. And as they say, there, as a lot of teachers have said this, it's not perfect that I can do this, but they have it to where they have the desks set to go so the students can actually work in these pairs, different areas. I actually have some pictures of them actually working this with an Edu protocol model, which I'm going to talk about a little bit. And basically how it is like my problem with my classroom, and actually I've had my principal say this too, that I have a very a very cemented classroom. I'm a computer lab. I can have chairs move around, but my computers are where they are. I have counters. I don't really have desks. You really can't move around. Kind of like once they're there, they're there. I mean, yeah, you can talk to a partner, and I try to move them around for group activities, but it doesn't really allow that collaboration space. So I'll talk. That's my little problem. But also the question is how we answer questions. A type about, how the typical teacher will answer between 200 to 400 questions a day. I think I actually do that. I think some definitely in the 240 model. But they talk about the difference of proximity questions, the questions students ask because they happen to be close by, the stop thinking questions students ask so they can reduce their effort, which is this right? The classic, hey, Dr. Am I doing this right? Yes, you're doing it right, or you're fine. It's that area, or the keep thinking question was the question students ask to keep them thinking. So the research has showed that 90% of questions students are asked are either proximity questions or stop thinking questions. We don't do enough of the keep thinking, where students ask how they'll keep working, keep trying, keep thinking. That's also works really well. And of course, the one where typical classrooms, what does homework look? I'm not a homework teacher. It does the thing, but it really talks about, what it should look like into that narrative. And of course, fostering student autonomy and thinking classrooms, getting into more areas, the discussion. That's what I love this little here. How do you do those extensions and hints and everything working it, colliding, consolidation of the lesson of thinking classroom, how they should take notes in the class. Now, I think this is a really important piece. I use a lot of digital areas and so forth, but I don't have a classroom that's traditional note taking. And many classrooms do have a different type of note taking skills now. Now they have PowerPoint slides, we have Quizlets, we have note cards, we have Spark Notes. Students take notes, or they provide them like vocabulary or a little definitional stuff. It's how it does it in that thinking classroom that really works in here. And I'll be talking this in a couple weeks as my model goes here, because like I said, it's me going through all of these 14 steps here and how I'll work on it. Because this is episode 1, guys. I'm going to be doing this for quite a few weeks. It's going to be going on a few weeks. But anyhow, and then of course, another thing is, how do you evaluate them? I'm always talking about I was really the king of assessments in my classroom. So how do we evaluate that thing classroom? How do we use the enforcement? And of course, finally, how do you grade them? How does that all work in the long run? So that's actually what we're doing. And by the way, if you want to hear more about that area here, like I said, here is Shay and Pav here, Building Classrooms. It's episode 131. You can get that right now. You can listen on your favorite podcast area or piece on there. Shout out to Shay and Pav there. Where is it? Somewhere George Chorus is saying, and many people are now just turned off this podcast because they just don't like the soundboard. Sorry. So how did this really start? Well, I had a semester, went over, started out really high. We kind of had a kind of change in various areas, administration, areas, conduct, and a few other things. And I really had noticed my students were just not engaged. Like my freshmen were very engaged. My seniors were engaged, but the sophomores and juniors were not very engaged. It wasn't really working. We had the pieces here, and I'll talk about this a little later in future episodes about, different types of students you see in the classroom. I mean, if you don't believe me, I'm holding the book right here, folks. I have the whole book, so you can see this is Tab. Peter, if you're watching this, I'll take any advice you can from you and everything. And if you want to be a guest on the podcast, I'm just giving you a call out there for a little shameless promotion. But as you can see, I am working on hugely on this pieces. So the first thing I had to do working on this is we're still on winter break. We start school next week, right after January. And I'm going to be doing this little piece on a couple other things here. So I'm going to be going over and doing that part. So how do we start building this? Well, one of the thing is, if you notice here, and I'll go right back to that's what I love about live streaming here, guys. When you mess up a little thing here, let me go ahead and share my screen again. There we go. The audio is going to be so fun. So let's go up to that first area right there. So, I the randomization of groups and everything, I have actually the old class, and they always talk about using cards. I have a set of playing cards, big playing cards. I have a little set here where, students, I'm going to hand these out on the thinking classroom days. Because you have to get them, because one thing they say is getting them into that rhythm, getting them into that tasks about how to thinking classroom. And it takes a few days, but they said the first couple of days is doing it, like doing a non-curricular. Like I have a plan right now for non-curricular for 2 of my classes, because I'm really targeting 2 main classes where I'm going to do this on a regular basis. And then ones that I'm going to do this slowly and see where it works and when done. I'm actually going to talk about one of those classrooms coming up in one of the models I'm going to be using here. But one of the things we're going to be doing on that is working on that piece. So here's one thing is, of course, is the big thing is talking about how they get to that whiteboard. So I do have this huge whiteboard behind me in my classroom, huge whiteboard. I don't use it a lot. I seriously don't. Maybe I'll have the agenda on one side and I'll just have the projector here. So first of all, that's a little problem. I do have I have a front of the room, no matter what, I have that front room because I'm cemented here, but I have several whiteboards. And now one thing is getting here is I don't have I only have a big whiteboard. You could maybe get two groups. They always say, try to get in these groups of three. And I'm looking at my class sizes and group of threes are perfect for me. But I had to start looking at how I was going to get more of a whiteboard here for this interaction, for the thinking. So two things I did, and this is another thing Shane Pad, they talked about whiteboards, and I like whiteboards. They're kind of interactive, kind of like rocket books and everything. So one thing I found out from two of my teachers is they converted a couple of their desks in that using whiteboard sheets. And there's a couple of ones we can here. So the regular whiteboard sheets, here's one here. I just pulled these actually just showed up the other day, and I got a good set of 1x11 here because I can cut these into, because I kind of want to, with my classes, I don't really want more than 6 groups because I think it's perfect for the sizes and everything. So I'm taking a couple of my counters, and I'm taking the whiteboards here, as you can see here, and I'm going to put these on it. That's what they've done to their desks. And I'm also going to, of course, use the Post-it dry eraser sheets. These are actually good size sheets. And I got a really good price on them right now. I actually had a couple before Christmas sale. So I got a couple more bucks off of these. So I've gone over here for using the right. So that's one thing, is the curricular part of the model of using that too. And I think I have an example right here. If I get onto it here, what that kind of looks like as I take a nice little drink here. And I'm having a problem here. Hold on a second. It's gonna be a lot of editing on this episode. Anyhow, okay, here we go. Here we go. Using Whitebook of all places here. Let me go ahead and share my Google search pad. So there is them using the areas too. This is actually a better one of the younger students. I think this is lower middle school, but this is a kind of a little area here of them using the whiteboards to do their thinking. But as you can see, the students are working, in collaborative right here. But as you can see, here they are working on their little math problems here, and you can do this here. And like I said, my whiteboards are just about this big here, so it's pretty good. These are groups of 2. But here it is, a good example here using the tabletop activities. There we go. Using this on everything. Like I said, I'll have this in the show notes so people can do this who are listening to the audio. So basically right here, how they're using the kind of activities such as layouts and the table is what I talk to my teacher. But as you can see, they're doing the curricular tasks right here of how they're doing. This is regular curricular tasks. So you start them with non-curricular tasks where like you give them a challenge, and I'll talk about this in a couple later in an episode here. But as you can see here in the visual, this is how they're working that little area here with the parts here, and you can see how they're doing the whiteboards and so forth. Now, some people ask me, and this actually goes back in the notes, like, well, what do you do here? You've done this. What happens to keep these notes? Because you're like, well, I got my group, and this is Lisa, Tom, and Michael, just to make up some names. I actually don't have any of those saying that. But, them taking like, how would you keep it? Well, a really cool little thing is here, a couple years ago, I did the rocket books. My old district did a lot with rocket books. They were huge in middle school. And I got a bunch of what was known as beacons. And basically these are a type of orange triangle here. And I'll show you right here with the one video. As you can see, they have an adhesive side here. You can put in a corner of any whiteboard or similar little areas, and usually can make them this orange. If you're on a budget, believe it or not, you can use a type of dry eraser, or you can actually use a similar construction paper to do them here with magnets, and it will actually do the area here, and it will actually scan these to a little area. Like here's a little part right here where they're doing a little rocket book, a little area here, and it scans them in here. There's a little office here, which is really cool. And what it does is it actually makes a PDF of these, and you can actually upload them directly to your Google Drive or other cloud system and everything. Now they're kind of on sale right now for $10.39. You get a set of 8. They're kind of, a set of 4. There's another one on Amazon, and I can get a set of 8, and they're 2 different sizes. They're kind of here's the average. These are the average size. I have about I have 8 of these, and you can get a smaller size one too. But then this way I can record work and I can actually upload these to a Google Drive I share on Google Classroom. So that way they have their notes and everything for materials so they can review these from their groups and everything. So that's one little way I'm doing there. And now going to the curricular task is really using a lot of different models here. Now, one thing Shane Pav talked about using Frayer model and a few other things. So of course that comes the Edu Protocols. Edu Protocols has actually got a lot of stuff that works really, really, really good with the thinking classroom for some of the models. Because after they work on these here, I have an example here of one I'm working on really quick here, and I'll just show you a little preview here on the visual. Audio won't be so, but basically I'm using Frayer Friend. I'm doing a quick little contract for one of my upcoming classes. Basically it tells them how they're going to write these up, and they're going to do the Frayer model. And one of the things they're going to do is, they'll put their name and the partner name here. Like I said, I got to get them move around that classroom. Two things that when entering a formal business agreement, what are two things? When providing a product or service to a client, what would you use? Two things for buying a product service for another entity. And then four things when protecting your business confidential. Because what happens is what we're going to be doing here, we're going to learn about contract laws in one of my first lessons, one of my new classes. And then we're going to talk about warranties. They're going to actually write up a one using the warranty clause, which is actually right here, which is Iron Chef, where they're going to work on the thinking classrooms with the partner and actually design everything from the lesson. And they're going to really be working on what does a warranty look like? How long should their warranty last based on laws? What are the different types of warranty that would actually work for the product? And they have to put the image here, and they have to use a little piece from the OCC model here, which I'll be teaching them in the class before. What is the difference with the product? What is a service warranty? And then, of course, what is state law? And of course, the state law goes by current state care. Like I'm in Illinois. It would look different probably if you were in California or Nevada or North Carolina, or if you were in Virginia or, Maine or whatnot. What does the state law say about what happens if you violate a warranty for a product and service? And they're going to be bringing these all together. And then later on, what we're going to do is we're going to actually create a product. And they're going to have to write out a contract for that between the person who makes it and who sells it. And then they actually have to come up with a warranty of the product. And that's what we're going to do in this thinking classroom. So we're going to use this model quite a little bit to create that. Now that's one of my new classes. That's really kind of building the thinking classroom right into it. I'm using this model. Like I said, I'll talk more as we go here of our first pieces here. Like the next episode, I'll talk about, what was it like for students for the first time using it? What did I learn? What went right? What went wrong? What did I learn for the next one? Then I'm actually going to be sneaking this into some other pieces. So one, and this is actually an Edu Protocol 2, and I'm actually going to do this right here, even though it's not actually a new top tack, but that's, of course, hexagon thinking, which is a little area here too. Let me just get this better so you can see. No, I don't like that view. Let's try. That does look better. So the colorful tool here, and this is actually originally by Betsy Paz. This is over actually on the Cult of Pedagogy website here, but it basically is how it works with the area. But basically is you take the idea of a hexagon, because they have 6 sides. And where the connection should be to everything. Some people call this the honeycomb. I use honeycomb a lot for like designing areas. And then when you place many ideas on different hexagons, you discuss how they're connected, but yet how are they different? Like this one did an example. They did the Vietnam War. This was right here. It says right the Vietnam era. How did that move on to some of the different things, such as who was president at the time, Johnson? How did it involve the Cold War? How were people dealing for the draft? And then kind of moving it on here. Believe it or not, Yoko Ono is on here because it's a really interesting thing for musicians. And then this is another, and this is the kind of the setup like right here, different areas here. So they talked about the different areas here. This is based on Orwell's book here and a few other things and that. But there was and this is the design here, how it worked. But there was a great model on going back to Edu Protocols here. And it really got the hexagon thinking where they write or draw something in each box. They fill as much of that space as possible, and then they cut out the hexagon. So like here, a place you love to visit, your dream job, something that makes you smile, a name about your favorite food, your favorite sport, and so forth. And then what they did is you had to go ahead and make the connection. So right here, your favorite food, how does that connect to your dream job? Well, maybe you want to be, favorite food, and you want to be a entrepreneur or anything in a restaurant and do it that way. Another one is your favorite hobby sport, something that makes you smile. So maybe you love playing soccer and that's something that makes you smile. So that's a connection there. And here is a one right here of some students that did a couple ones right here. Here's their little model, as you can see here from the connection. Here's connection one, connection two. I'm actually gonna do this in one of my other classes, digital literacy, because we always talk about these various essential questions and how they work. So what we're gonna do is I'm actually gonna do this model, and it's going to go ahead and work on this too. And believe it or not, you can find a very simple hexagon here. You can put in here and put your apes using our good old buddy right here, Canva. As you can see right here, the hexagon graphic organizer. And as you can see, this is by Heather Breedlove, is the one who made the design for this. So don't worry, Heather, I'm giving you a shout out, and I'll leave this in the show notes as well. But as you can see, you can just do these. You can customize the template, no problem, and mine will pop up here in a second. There it is. But what happens is you would go ahead and take the template. You can do a couple of ones. I actually have a template too from Edgy Protocols for Reboot that has a much larger version. But as you see, you can do this. And then you can go ahead and type in your areas. And of course, you can add lines and make your various dividers like the area goes from there. And you're pretty much set to that. So that's using the hexagon thinking. That also works here. So I get the students out that would actually do this, make their connections. So you can see it's not quite the whiteboard activity as you saw in the areas. But this is a good way to start breaking it slowly into it. Works really good for graphical design as well as thinking. And then they go ahead and put this in the model, and they'll answer their questions on a Google slide or a piece on here for a Google Doc Hyper slide. So that's one of the ways I'm kind of putting into that for the building classroom. So I'm really, really working on putting this in here. And as you can see in my picture, my dog's kind of in the video as well. But this is how I will be actually in relation the thinking classroom. So it's really work here. It really focuses on getting students to think, get them out of their chairs, really putting that life learning into it. Also works hugely, of course, work on classroom management, because, you know, you got to keep the classroom going. You want thinking, you want areas, but you got to teach them how to work it. So this is something I'm going to do starting, you know, this new semester starting next week here. So I'm going to be talking each week here about how I'm going to use the thinking classroom models in my classroom. But this is kind of the ground floor. What are the ideas I'm thinking of, how I'm going to hopefully start implementing this, and then we'll just see how it is. Next episode here, we'll talk about the first introductions of these with the students. Next one will be actually a couple of the, as you saw with the models I did for Edgy Protocols, actually working with that area, and then starting to apply it as we get weeks on into. So this is going to be multiple episodes, probably about, I'm going to probably say this is probably going to go until about March. So close to spring break here, these episodes, and I'll have breaks in between them too as I do them. So I'm thanking everybody who joined us today. I do apologize those who were trying to do the Instagram live feed. We were having a couple issues here. I can see it on my little area here. It's kind of having a correction issue, so I'll get that hopefully corrected for issue 2. Audio version, please check out the show notes for more information on that, including Shave and Paz episode about building the thinking classroom model. And I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today here on the Pixel Classroom podcast. And on that note, guys, I'm going to say happy New Year.